What's up, guys? It's Ligsters here, and I'm going to be bringing you my own personal review and recommendation of the Astro C40 TR. But before I get into this, I just want to give you guys a forewarning. I am not a professional YouTuber. I am not a professional video editor or sound guy by any means. I'm recording this on an iPad, and I'm using audio from an AirPod to see maybe the iPad audio is better, maybe the AirPod audio is better. I don't know how I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to do this all in one take, so if I make any mistakes, forgive me. I'm not a pro. I just really want to bring you guys information, a very honest review and recommendation, and as much information from someone who I feel, right, myself, that I have a good amount of experience with controllers. So if this is a little lengthy, I apologize. If you want to get right down to my opinion and recommendation, I would fast forward to the point where I'm actually holding the Astro C40 up into the camera. You'll probably most likely catch me talking about it a little more in depth. But before I get there, for those of you who are going to stick around throughout the video, I kind of wanted to get you guys into some background as to why I think I have a good idea with controllers and why I feel there's a good recommendation for that one. I've been gaming ever since I was 8. I'm a huge video gamer, 9, I can't remember. Starting with Super Mario Brothers, Sonic the Hedgehog 2, Sega Genesis, Dreamcast, Nintendo 64, PlayStation 2, 3, 4, Xbox, you name it, I've played it. First-person shooters, MMORPGs. I have a long history of video game and gaming in general. So I'm a huge fan. I'm a lover of video games, and with that, I really started getting into the competitive portion of things when Overwatch came out. So I really wanted a competitive controller for Overwatch, and the first thing that had come out back then was the Nacon Pro Revolution, or Revolution Pro. You can Google it, you'll figure out the name. It's a step up from this in terms of what it brings for competitiveness, but this is the staple controller, right? The DualShock 4, and I have the Nintendo Switch controller, the Nintendo Switch Pro controller. I'll get into this a little bit. There's a reason why I have that out there. But I stepped up to this, and I guess most of this video is going to be a comparison / review / recommendation, but we'll start with the Nacon Pro Revolution. And this thing was wonderful when I first got it, but the quality, or actually the reliability of this, is absolutely garbage. This is my second controller. I went through loops and bounds and whatever you want to call it to get a second controller. Long story short, my first controller within the first month started having problems with the wire. By month 2, I forgot what other problem it had. I had emailed immediately within the first month Nacon, the company. I had sent them many messages from many email addresses because they weren't responding. And I had to do some shady stuff to get a second one without having to pay the price tag of the first one. If you want the story behind that, I'll try to, if you ask it, I'll try to give you guys in the comment section. Not the best. I don't really want to share that story. But anyway, controller feels great. It has 4 button mappings on the back, so you can assign 4 different buttons, which is great. I'm not going to get into the details of this. You can find this on YouTube. Someone else will kind of give you a heads up. But from my experience, it was a great controller for a good portion of time until it broke, until I got a second one, which is another problem. The R started breaking on this one. A couple other problems that I realized I needed to get a different controller. Plus, I don't spend my money much on anything else other than gaming, so I was really comfortable with buying another one, another controller after this. So once this started breaking, which I do not recommend this whatsoever because you will not get support for this, and it will break. I've read countless reviews on this, and all saying the same thing that I've experienced with, how the reliability of this is terrible. And it comes in this case, but I won't get into the details of that. Now, shortly after this, I had bought a Nintendo Switch, and I bought the Switch Pro controller. Now, I bring this up because I have medium to small hands. They're definitely not large. I'd say medium. And this controller was the one controller in my entire life, of all controllers that I've used, from the original PlayStation to the Nintendo 64, which is a wonky controller, the GameCube, the PS4. This was the best controller I had ever owned. in terms of its ergonomics. It just feels perfect in my hands. The location of everything is perfect. It's got the asymmetrical sticks, or however you want to call them, or yeah, asymmetrical as opposed to parallel. My fingers and hands just fit beautifully on this controller, and to date, this is quite possibly the best controller I've ever had in terms of how it feels in my hands. But it doesn't have the buttons in the back. It doesn't really, the Switch doesn't really it's not really geared towards competitive gaming to begin with. There is Fortnite on there, but it is a horrible experience if you're coming from either the PlayStation 4 or PC or whatever. But in terms of the feel, this controller is just absolutely wonderful. Again, you want reviews on this one, check out other reviews on YouTube. I don't really want to make that the center of this video. Now, once the Nacon Pro Revolution controller started breaking, I bought the Scuff, I forgot the name of it, the one for the PlayStation, the Scuff Vantage. Now, I don't have that with me because within the first 2 weeks, I had to return that. That just had problems everywhere you can imagine. I can't even remember because I had it for such a short time, and I could not just imagine having spent that much money on a controller that was failing me within the first day. But just a little bit of a background on that. That controller had stick drift from the get-go. I did the firmware update. That didn't fix it either. It just felt cheap. Ergonomically, it was great. Not as good as a Switch Pro, but it was great. It felt good in the hands. The button layout on the back, everything was a good controller. It just felt cheap, and you can tell they didn't really put too much effort in making it reliable. The Bluetooth connectivity had issues. It wasn't saving my button mappings even after the firmware update. There was ridiculous stick drift that it's just unplayable, especially for someone who's playing Fortnite a lot, who's playing Overwatch a lot, who needs the perfections in terms of the aiming and whatnot. It felt great in the hands. Usability-wise, terrible. I do not recommend that controller. Do not spend your money. I had even heard horror stories from family members, from friends who bought other Scuff controllers, and I wanted to take a shot. And as opposed to the Nacon Pro Revolution, which at the time I couldn't find anywhere other than going overseas, the Scuff Vantage was one I could buy at GameStop, I could return, I had a person I can talk to if I ever had any difficulties with it, and GameStop was wonderful. They actually took the return back, and they recommended the Xbox One Elite controller, which is the next step up in what I've been gaming with for the most part recently. Now, they recommended this with an adapter because obviously it's an Xbox and you need an adapter in order to play it on the PS4. But this was the controller in which I've been gaming with for the longest time now. Now, this controller is absolutely wonderful. Reliability-wise, nothing's happened to it yet. I play extensively, so I know if a controller breaks, it's poorly made because I don't chuck my controllers, I don't throw them around. I'm a little bit older, I don't really rage and do all that. I take care of my controllers. I can even show you some of the old ones. I'm not going to go through them, but I take care of them. I have old ones from old systems and handhelds and everything just the test of time. This does really well. The beauty with this one that the Nacon doesn't have is the interchangeable joysticks, the interchangeable D-pad, the trigger stops, all that stuff that you're going to find in another review video. The one thing about this controller that I don't like is because I'm so used to PlayStation controllers, it felt a little uncomfortable in my hand. They were awesome in terms of putting 4 paddles on the back, similar to the Nacon, but in my experience, the lower paddles, these long ones, if I can show you here, were a little unusable. So it kind of just diminished this down to having 2 paddles in the back, which I believe having the 4 paddles is just an extra. The 2 paddles is sufficient for what you really need. But these were just a little bit uncomfortable, and I never really got the hang of using all 4 paddles on the back. My fingers would overlap. It would be just this weird... I just never got used to it, and I tried for weeks, so I had to just dumb it down to 2. But overall, great controller, but ergonomically not the best. I experienced a little bit of hand pain with this controller over time, and I played for hours on end, so ergonomics and my hands you know, the health of my hands and my own body is really important to me. So as happy as I was with my performance with this controller, I was unhappy with how it felt. And fast forward to the Astro C40, which is what I got about a week ago. Now, this bad boy, I'm going to just cut right to the chase. I recommend this controller fully. Now, I am not being sponsored by anything or anyone. I spend my own money on these things, yada yada. You've heard this on other videos. So this is a really honest review. I will be crapping on other controllers like the Scuff Vantage with no problem, because I surely don't want anyone to go through what I had to go through to kind of return that thing. But again, GameStop was awesome, so props to them. I know horror stories with GameStop. Now, getting into the Astro C40. Now this, remember how I mentioned the Switch Pro controller had just ergonomically one of the best feeling controllers I've ever had in my entire life? When I saw this, I thought, wow, this looks very similar. I wonder if it's going to feel just as good in the hands. And it does. That's the beauty of this controller. So first and foremost, my thing is about ergonomics. I want to be comfortable when I'm playing. I want to make sure I don't feel any hand cramps, hand pains. And this, just the shape of this controller, they got this down right. Now, the Switch Pro controller is just a teensy-weensy bit small. So I kind of felt my fingers overlapping in certain areas. I felt a little bit of difficulties, so minor that, like I said, one of the best controllers I've ever had. So it's not really that big of a deal. Now, the C40 is just a tad bigger. I'm not going to do this justice by putting them up together, but I'll try. The C40 is just a tad bigger, which makes it, at least for my hands, just a tad more comfortable. It fits perfectly in my hands. And the paddle placement on the back is wonderful. Remember how I brought up the Xbox One Elite controller? The paddle placement on that was a little difficult, and there was 4 paddles. So, long story short, the paddle placement is wonderful. The button pressing is not accidental. I sometimes accidentally press it on the Xbox One X controller. From my experience, the customizability of this controller, the way it feels as opposed to that Scuff Vantage or even the Nacon Pro Revolution, this just feels sturdy. Now, it's not going to wow you, right? The Scuff Vantage, you can change the faceplate, you can do all these things and make it look fancy. This thing looks pretty plain. It looks pretty boring. But let me tell you, it is probably, at this point, the best controller I've ever owned. It's between these two, and I'm having a really difficult time not giving it to the Astro C40 just because of all the customizability. But again, you're also paying $200 for this thing. So anyway, you can customize the sensitivity of the joysticks. You can customize what's going on in the back. You have trigger stops. You have wireless mode. You have wired mode, Bluetooth mode. You have 2 different custom settings. You will find these reviews everywhere detailing everything. I just really wanted to give you a very personal opinion, a very honest opinion, a very real opinion. I'm not getting paid by anyone, and I spent a ton of money on these things. So I really want to make sure that I can give you guys an honest opinion, and where you spend your money won't be wasted. As you can tell, I have so much so far. I've wasted a lot. So this controller is absolutely wonderful. I think the other plus to this is you can flip this, right? You can play, and I have played parallel. I've gotten used to asymmetrical. You could do anything you want with this controller that you can with any other controller. The only negative, I would say, that it doesn't have is 4 paddles on the back as opposed to 2. But that's just me nitpicking. I think overall, this controller is just absolutely wonderful. I recommend this. Take the chance, right? Go to your GameStop. I think you have 30 days to return it. Go to your GameStop if you really, really want to get a good idea. That was my plan, is figure this out. If this was just absolute garbage, I would return it. I made sure I spoke to the representative at GameStop to let them know I had some issues returning the Scuff. I want to make sure I don't have them with this. They promised me I wouldn't. I have 30 days to return it if I don't like it. But I don't think I'm returning this one. So again, if you want in-depth details on this, if you really want to get a better idea of what's going on with this, go to other reviews. There's a ton on YouTube. I just want to let you know from my standpoint, from having played with all different types of controllers, I wanted to give you an idea as to what I'm holding on to right now. This is hands down the best competitive controller I've ever had. It's not flashy, right? But it feels wonderful. It just, that's it. Ergonomically, it's the best controller, and it has everything you need. Now, if you take a look at my YouTube channel, you're going to see it's just videos of me playing Fortnite or Overwatch. So have fun. There's nothing on there. It's just for my own recollection of certain funny moments or certain wins. So I don't expect my channel to grow. I really don't think I want it to grow. I'm very busy as a person. That's why I'm doing this all in one take. But if you have any recommendations as to what I said, how I should do things in the future, if I ever feel like making another video, I'll be happy to. If you guys like this, let me know. Let me know if you want any other information. I do have a lot to share. But either way, I don't expect anything of this. I just want to make sure you guys make the right decision for yourselves when putting your hard-earned money towards a controller that's worth just as much as the console itself, right? Anyway, thank you guys for listening. This is Ligsters. Hope you guys had a good time.